I was on my phone, saw my video doing well. I knew what was gonna happen. I walked out of Chili's. They never saw me again. Most proud of never giving up. I've wanted to quit YouTube. Anxiety, fear.
Of what? From who?
The audience. Thursday, it's forgotten.
Yeah.
You could be the king of the world. My men should love me. They're like, where's your new stuff? Where is it? Where is it? I was like,
what have you done for me lately, right?
What have you done for me lately? Because how fast YouTube moves. So it's like, damn. So there's a lot of pressure.
So how do you measure success then? I mean, is it subs and views, or I mean, it sounds more like it's validation from your audience.
The thing that YouTube, and I've learned this from even the biggest, most confident YouTubers, YouTube makes a lot of us insecure because we are getting our validation now from how many likes did that video get?
Yeah.
What did the comments say?
Yeah.
Or when I do a vlog, Yusuf, you got fat, or you're this, you're that. So I'm like, instead of just like having that confidence, I look at myself in the mirror, and my validation isn't from the real world.
Yeah.
It's from a comment section. So it's crazy.
Do you listen to the comments? Do you respond to them? How seriously do you take it? I think if you ever want to go get depressed, just read YouTube comments.
Oh yeah. Here's the thing. If what they say I believe, then it affects me. Yeah. So if somebody goes, this video sucks for A, B, and C, and I agree with A, B, and C, then that comment gets to me.
Yeah.
But if I believe in my video and I think it's the hottest shit, and they, excuse my language, and they say it's wrong for A, B, and C, I'm like, no. Like when somebody like calls a prank fake, right? Yeah. But I was out there busting my butt for whatever doing it, and you're gonna say that? That pisses me off because it's like their opinion is wrong completely. So that's what frustrates me.
All right, we've been spending a few minutes with super tuber Yusuf over at FouseyTube. Yusuf, thanks so much.
Thank you. I need to go get something to eat. So.
Right. Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Your vitals. Oh, shit.
Is definitely one of my favorite features. So let's take a look at how we can master the layers panel in order to easily work with multiple images in a single document. We're going to start by creating a new. I'll choose File and then New. And I'll make this document 2600 pixels wide by 1625 pixels high. I want to keep the resolution at 300 pixels per inch and make sure that the color mode is set to 8-bit. If these are set to inches, you can quickly change them by just selecting the unit of measurement that you want from the list. Down below in the advanced area, we'll also make sure that the color profile is set to in order to create this new document. I like to create a new document before I start adding my other images. It sort of sets the basic canvas that I'm working within. Now to scoot to bridge, I'll use File Command Option O. I want to select these first two files, the beans and the grapes, and open them both. So with them both selected, I'll use Command O in order to open them into Photoshop. We can see the Untitled 01 document. When I have my cursor positioned over the tab of that document will pop forward. I then need to drag my cursor to position it on top of the empty space here in the Untitled 1 document. And if I hold down the Shift key before I release my cursor, Photoshop will drop that grape file right directly into the center. Now we can see that it came in rather large, but we can need the grapes file open, so I'll click on the X in order to close it. Then I'll click on the Beans tab and do the same thing. With the Move tool selected, I'll click and hold down my mouse, drag this Beans file on top of the Untitled 1 layer. Once that document pops to the foreground, I'll reposition my cursor anywhere within the document area, hold down the Shift key, and then release the cursor to drop that bean file right into my now multi-layered document. We can see that all of the layers are here in the Layers panel. If I want to hide one of the layers, I can click on the eye icon in order to toggle off its visibility. I'll click it again in order to toggle it on. If I toggle off the visibility of all of the different layers, we can see that there is a checkerboard that designates transparency behind all of the layers. Now let's go ahead and turn back on the visibility for the background layer. And I also want to select the background layer. So there's a difference between simply toggling on and off the visibility and actually selecting the layer by clicking on it. The background layer is unique. There are 3 things that you can't do with a background layer. You can't move it, you can't erase to transparency, nor can you change its stacking order. If I try to reposition the background, this white area in the canvas with the moving it, when I release my cursor, Photoshop will tell me that it can't move it because the layer is locked. If I try to reposition it in the layers, if I see it on this image, nothing to the back, I click on the double-headed arrow to switch the color so that my background color is black. You can see that it's actually erasing to the background color and not to transparency. So I'll use Edit and Undo to undo the eraser. In order to convert the background into a layer, I can click on the lock icon. Now, if I select the Move tool, we can see that I can reposition this layer. I could also change the stacking order by clicking and dragging it up in the Layers panel. And if I select the Eraser tool again by tapping the E key, and I click and drag in my image, you can see that I'm no longer erasing to the background color, but instead I'm erasing to transparency. Now, I don't necessarily need this white layer in the document, so with Layer 0 selected, in order to delete it, I'll just tap and rename it Grapes. I'll tap Return, and that will apply the name to the layer. In order to change the stacking order of the layers, I can click on either layer and reposition it. So I could click on the beans layer and drag it down below the grapes, or I could click on the above the grapes. But in this case, I want the grapes layer to be on top, so I'll click and reposition it so the grapes are on top of the beans. I then want to reposition the grapes layer. I want to move it so that it's only showing or only visible in the top area of my document. There are a number of ways to find the center point of my document. One of the easiest ways is to use the View menu and then choose to show your rulers. You can then position your cursor anywhere in the ruler area, click and drag out a ruler. Now, because the units of measurement are set to inches, I'm not exactly sure where the halfway mark is in this document. So I'll release the cursor and then use Command Z or Control Z in order to undo that. If I want to change the units of measurements, I can right mouse click or control click on Mac in the ruler area and then change this to %. Now it's very easy for me to tell when I click and drag out a guide, I can see when it reaches 50%. If I know exactly where I want to add a guide, I can choose View and then New Guide. I can tell it the orientation. In this case, I want it vertical and I want to position it at 50%. I'll tap OK or hit the return key and I now have that guide. And then tap the V key in order to select my Move tool. And then on my Layers panel, I can reposition this grapes layer. But I can see that it's way too big, so I need to resize it. I'll choose Edit, Transform, and then Scale. The only problem is that the file is so large that I can't actually menu. I'm going to choose to fit on screen. It's that same keyboard shortcut, Command 0, that we were to fit the image on screen, only when I'm in Free Transform, it now fits the transformation handles on screen. I'll select the transformation handle in the upper left, and holding down the Shift key, I will drag to resize this image. Now, I want to make sure that I've got grapes going all the way across, so when I position my cursor inside of Free Transform, I can click and drag in order to nudge that over. And then I'll resize it a little bit smaller, again holding down the Shift key in order to constrain the proportions. Once I've got the grapes in the right position, I can either click the check mark or tap Return or Enter in order to apply that scaling. I'll hide the grape layer for a moment, and we can do the same thing for the beans layer. I've got it targeted in the Layers panel, meaning that I selected it, and then I'll choose Edit, and then Transform and Scale. This time I'll hold down both the Option and the Shift key in order to transform this smaller so that it just fits within the width of the open document. I'll tap Return or Enter in order to apply that transformation, and with the Move tool still selected, click and drag up to reposition it at the top of the document. I believe that I like the grapes as my banner better. Let's toggle it on again by clicking on the eye icon. And if I want to delete the beans file, I can select it in the Layers panel because I no longer need it, and just tap the Delete key, or I can drag it to the trash icon in order to throw it away. Now let's go ahead and zoom in using Command 0 in order to fit in view. Now at this point, we've done enough work on the image that I would want to save it. This as my banner into the 06 Layers folder as a Photoshop document because I want to make sure that I retain the layers. I'll click Save. I'll make sure that I maximize the compatibility, although I don't need to see this again, so I'll click Don't Show Again, click OK, and then choose File, Close. I'll close the bridge. We can see that I now have the banner.psd file here in the folder. Now we need to add some additional photographs to this banner, so I'll choose File, Browse and Bridge, and I'm going to select the peppers, the pumpkins, the strawberries, and the tomatoes, because instead of opening each one of these individually and then dragging and dropping them into the single document, I'll choose Tools, and then Photoshop, and then load files into Photoshop Layers. This tells Bridge to hand off all 4 of those documents and put them into a single multi-layered document. Now, it's not the same document as the banner document, but at least I don't have to drag and drop so many images. In order to see my Layers panel a little bit larger, I'm going to double-click on my Libraries panel in order to collapse it. Then I'm going to select all of the layers in the Layers panel by selecting the top one, holding down the Shift key, and selecting the bottom one. I want to see both this untitled document as well as the banner at one time. Under the Window menu, I'll choose Arrange, and then Tile. You'll notice that in a previous movie, I assigned a keyboard shortcut, Command-Shift-T, in order to quickly tile my images. Likewise, I've added a keyboard shortcut, Command-Shift-R, in order to consolidate all of my images back to tabs. For now, we'll use Command-Shift-T. And then I'm going to drag from my Layers panel those 4 layers across to my banner image. I'm going to hold down the Shift key because then when I release the cursor, it will drop all 4 of those files right in the center of the banner image. I no longer need Untitled 1, so I'll click on the X mark in order to close that without saving. I'm going to change the stacking order of these 4 layers. I want to make sure that the strawberry layer is on the bottom, and then the pumpkin layer, then the pepper layer, and then the tomato. You'll notice that in the Layers panel, each layer is automatically named, and that's because of the way that we handed them off from Bridge into a single layer document. In the last movie, we created some guides, although they're not showing right now. If we wanted them to be displayed, we could go under the View menu, select Show, and then choose Guides. But I need a different set of guides, so we'll return to the View menu, and this time I want to create a new guide layout. In the new guide layout, I want 4 different columns because I want to put each one of these 4 photographs along the bottom portion of the banner. So for columns, I'll type in 4. Then for gutter, I actually want the gutter to be about 40 pixels. So I'm going to type in 40 and then px for pixels. I also want a margin on the left and the right hand side. So I'll enter in, let's say maybe 300 pixels from the left and 300 px from the right. We can also choose to clear those existing guides, which will remove the ones that we already had, making it easier to see these 4 columns that we just created. I'll click OK, and now I want to reposition and resize each of these photographs within the column using the Layers panel, but sometimes it's easier and more efficient to use one of these 3 shortcuts. If I right mouse click on top of an image, you'll note underneath that image. For example, if I right mouse click over here, we get a much shorter list because I'm only clicking on top of the grapes. But if I select grapes, we can see in the Layers panel that it was automatically selected for me. If I right mouse click on top of the tomatoes, I can select any of these layers, Maybe I'll choose pumpkins, and we can see in the layers panel that the pumpkins layer was selected. I can also turn on auto select if I have the move tool selected. If I enable this, I want to make sure that I change it from group to layer so that it auto selects a layer for me. Now when I click on top of the grapes file, it's automatically selected. Likewise, if I click on top of the tomatoes, it becomes automatically selected. The only problem with this method is that if I need to select, for example, the peppers, which are underneath the tomato, I would need to move the tomatoes out of the way and then click to select the peppers. If I don't want auto select turned on all the time, I can disable it in the options bar, but as long as I have the move tool selected, if I hold down the command key and then click on top of a layer, it will automatically select that layer. You'll also notice that when I hold down the command key, I get a number of different guides that position themselves over different areas of my images. Those are the smart guides, which we'll talk about in just a moment. For now, I'm going to command click with the move tool to select the tomato layer, and I'm going to reposition it over here on the right hand side. Now I need to scale this down so that it fits within these two guides. So I'll choose edit and then transform and then scale. With the shift key held down, I'll grab one of the corner anchor points and resize this until it snaps right there to the guide. Then I'll tap return or enter in order to apply that transformation. I'll hold down the command key again and click on the pepper file to automatically select that. Then I'll move it to reposition it, and then choose edit, transform, and then scale. You'll notice that there's a keyboard shortcut for free transform, so I could use Command T in order to access free transform. Again, holding down the shift key and then resizing this until it snaps to my guides. I'll tap return or enter to apply that. Command click on the pumpkins to select it, reposition it, and then use Command T in order to quickly access free transform, holding down the shift key in order to constrain the proportions, and then tapping return or enter to apply it. And finally, we'll command click on the strawberries, move them into position, use Command T in order to bring up free transform, hold down the shift key, and drag that until it snaps right there to my guide. Tap return or enter, and you can see how by creating a new guide layout, it makes it very easy for me to transform these 4 images that were all different sizes to begin with, but now fit very nicely into those columns. I do want to select all 4 of these and just make sure that they are aligned along the top. So in the layers palette, I will select the strawberries and then hold down the shift key and click on the tomato layer. You can see in the options for the move tool, I have a number of different align options as well as distribute options. In this case, I simply want to choose the first one, which will align these based on their top edges right there. Now that I'm done with the guides, I have 2 options under the view menu. I can either choose to clear the guides, or I can select show and then just hide the guides by disabling it. That way, if I need to access them again, they're already in the file and I haven't deleted them completely. All right, at this point, I'll choose File and then Save As. I'm going to save this as Banner 01 now that we've made a number of changes, and then click Save. If I close the file using the keyboard shortcut Command W and we return to Bridge, we now see that we have our original banner PSD plus the Banner 01. Now it's time to add our last layer, which is a logo, to this document. I'll return to Bridge and then double-click on logo.psd in order to open it. Our images, which is Command-Shift-T. And then I can select both to drag and drop those images into Banner 01. If you hold down the Shift key before you release your cursor, we'll go ahead of the image. I no longer need the logo open, so I'll close that. And then we need to reposition the Organic Harvest logo within this document. As I start dragging it over with the Move tool, you can see that both of the layers are moving because they're both selected. You'll also notice that I get a number of magenta lines based on where I position this. These are my smart guides, and they're helping me to align the layers that I have selected with other layers in the document. So when I drag it over to the right here, you can see that when the right side of the logo aligns with the tomatoes, I get that nice pink line. I'll go ahead and release my cursor here, and those are in alignment. Now, the only problem is the logo is really fighting with the grapes that are underneath it. So I want to scale back or screen back the opacity of the grapes. In the Layers panel, I can select the grapes, or remember, since I have the Move tool selected, you select that